Thomas Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century. Does the structure of capitalism eliminate inequality or reinforce it? That is the question at the heart of Capital in the 21st Century by the French economist Thomas Piketty. One of the most discussed academic books published since the turn of the century, it analyzes the role that capitalism plays in global inequality. For years, most economists have believed that capitalism reduces inequality between the richest and the poorest in the long run. For example, the Kuznets curve hypothesis suggests that inequality rises when countries industrialize, but then falls. Piketty disagrees. He claims that capitalism creates greater economic inequality. The Kuznets curve was constructed using data relating to wealth and income collected from the late 19th to early 20th century. But Piketty benefited from a whole century of extra data, right into the early 21st century. Using this wider pool of figures, Piketty does two things. He argues that Kuznets' data is misleading because it was drawn from what turns out to be a very unusual period of history, and he creates a theory he calls the central contradiction of capitalism. So what is this central contradiction of capitalism? Throughout history, the annual rate of return on capital, which means the profits or the interest you earn from investing your money, usually exceeds the annual growth rate of the overall economy. Return on capital, or R, has remained relatively constant at around 5% despite radical changes in who controls the capital. It's generally the rich and individuals who inherit it, and whether it's held as gold, bonds, land, or in an investment portfolio. In contrast to this, the annual growth of an economy, or G, has almost always remained close to zero. It has only in the last 2 centuries reached a level of 1 to 2%. There's not much, short of revolution, that those individuals who rely solely on labor to earn a living can do to change it. Let me introduce Jane and Joe. They both earn $100,000 a year, but Jane also has a $10 million inheritance which she invests annually in the stock market, earning a yearly return of 5%. Joe has no savings. Let's see how their incomes evolve. Both Jane and Joe spend all of their annual salaries. After a year, Joe will have nothing left over, whereas Jane will have made $500,000 from her investments, which she reinvests. Fast forward 10 years. Joe's total wealth has grown very little. It depends on whether he is able to negotiate a raise, but raise or no raise, Jane's $10 million has now grown to be worth more than $16 million, demonstrating Piketty's argument that the difference in interest between R and G can lead to widening inequality over time. To avoid this, he proposes a global tax on wealth that would effectively lower the rate of return on capital.